around his mother.
Did he bring his mother to this relationship?
Well, you know, man is the only animal in nature who does bring his in-laws into the bargain. Every other animal meets and mates and has the next generation, but we come from our original families with all kinds of rules and regulations about intimate relationships.
Let me just say one of the things you said, and then you fill in the blanks for us.
Sure.
If as a child your parents fought a lot, then you're a child. Often the child retreats into the corner or insulates him or herself from this negative energy. That person, let's say it's a woman, a girl, little girl, hears her parents fighting all the time. She retreats. True? She's going to marry a person who will yell so that she's comfortable, neurotically speaking, with the event that has already been presaged or is part of her childhood. That's so?
She can do one of a number of things. She can get into that kind of relationship that you describe where she says, no, anger's terrible, I'll never be angry, and marry a guy with a short fuse so that whenever she is angry, she'll know how to set him off and he'll express all the anger and she'll say, oh, what a beast I'm married to. Or it may be that she'll just replicate the whole thing and get into a long-drawn fight with her own husband.
Well, if it's going to go either way, then what's instructive about psychiatry?
Well, what's instructive here is the fact that fighting is the big issue. It's for instance, the thing you're going to do the same or do the opposite about. Unless you've worked it out, you are going to either follow the family's emotional program or just do the opposite. And by the way, what happens in that case is that often in the third generation, anger will reemerge as a huge issue because it's a family issue.
What do you mean the third generation? You mean the kids?
I mean the grandchildren. Let's say you've got a couple where they're fighting all the time, and then the daughter links up with a husband where, in fact, there is no fighting. Everything is kept under the wraps. Well, the fact is that's as irrational a way of dealing with anger as the first one is. And so there's a lot of feeling that's generated, and people can't express it.
So what's the safety? The pressure valve then blows with the children?
It can either blow with the couple eventually, or it may just happen that in the next generation, the kids will be tremendously angry people because they're working with this pent-up frustration. I mean, the other way of handling anger is to talk about it, to express it, to acknowledge that we're all angry at some times and not angry at others.
I must get to these couples, but before I leave you for just 1 second, do you think it's a good idea for couples? Listen to this. You fighting? You don't have to tell us, you know. You fight with your husband.
Not with my hands.
No, not with your hands.
Good.
Verbally.
Yeah, because he likes the garage so much.
The garage.
Yes. If somebody call him, my husband is in the garage. Yeah. I want to take some tea together. He tell me, bring me the tea over here.
Your husband's in the garage.
In the garage. All the time.
What's the matter with you? Garage?
That's the way I enjoy my day.
So I enjoy the day. And then I enjoy myself in the house, cleaning by myself.
You spent thousands and thousands of dollars on a house. Where does he stay?
In the garage.
Can we get him?
Phil?
What are you doing?
Just play around, fool around with the tools over there.
Phil?
I'm waiting for him. Maybe we take the tea together, breakfast.
You'd like him to come in, you talk a little bit?
I want to talk to him.
Yeah, where is he?
When he was working, he was home. I picked him up 3 o'clock. He's home. Retired. He's in the garage till 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Now, you have some things you want to say to the man.
All the time, but I cannot say nothing.
Because?
Because he's in the garage.
Listen, I have an idea for you, really. I learned this from the book. Let me just explain. One thing you can do, we'll get to you in 1 second. You get to speak to him for 1/2 hour.
Half hour?
Oh, now listen. And he can't interrupt you.
Do you like him? Do you listen to me for a half hour?
No, this is what we're going to set up.
Oh.
How many times a week?
That's 1 hour. hour a week that they negotiate.
And then he gets his half hour.
And then he gets his
He's going
half
to take
hour.
a minute and a half and go to the garage.
Oh, no, he has to play by the rules. He has to play by the rules. This is, by the way, a classic marital problem. It's called she wants more closeness, he wants more space. And I think everyone in this room can identify with that problem.
Including Ginger Clarkson and Mark Ryan, who are married. This is your second marriage. You've been married, both of you. You've been married for 5 years. You teach American Studies at Yale.
Right.
So you must know the answer to everything. And you're also dean of the Jonathan Edwards College at Yale. Ginger's a music therapist. How do you identify with a garage couple?
That is so familiar because when I first met Mark, I really wanted intimacy. I wanted to be close to him. And I wanted to spend a lot of time together.
All the time.
You say that with some discomfort. You're saying she was a clinger then, huh?
Oh, well, that's how I experienced it, yeah. And I wanted that from her. I wanted her to give me that. I wanted her to chase me around, but I just didn't want her to be there all the time either. So there was a real conflict right away.
And I felt that the walls of Yale were not only a physical barrier, but also a psychological barrier, that whenever things got too close, Mark would retreat behind the Yale walls. And I would be very comfortable when we would travel together, and we would be on vacation together, and Mark would be incredibly nervous at being that intimate, that
Just
close.
together all the time, traveling, right?
And I loved it.
But you loved it because you didn't have the Yale distraction.
That's right. But when we'd return from vacation, I would freak out, and I'd think, oh, no,
We're
now
going
I'm
back to
outside of the Yale walls, and Mark is going to go back in, and
Yeah.
I'll
And
never
I
see
could
him.
breathe a sigh of relief.
But it was like the garage.
So, yes, it is like the garage. You've built an emotional garage to which you would feel more comfortable retreating when she would make
Yeah,
it?
yeah, I think that's true.
But
Your
it's-
but I
walls are
think
very thick
our
and
whole...
high.
You know about what we're talking about.
Oh, yes. I was married, and I feel what you have
You
felt.
were married.
I were.
You
married.
were.
I were. And I'm a foreigner, excuse me.
That's all right.
And,
So are we all, in a way.
and I have felt that he was afraid to get close, and even with the children, that I understood to a point,
Yeah.
but you have to realize, what if she didn't want to be close to you? You would be the one who would be chasing her. You see, you liked your time when you wanted.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I see our
How much do
whole...
you charge now? How did you
I
fit?
see our whole story.
Let's understand one thing. This is very classic. I don't think you're atypical at all, where
Yeah.
she's, honey, and he's saying, I'll just be finished with the sports page in just a moment. Now, how did you fix this?
It's taken a long time. I think slowly I began to get less afraid of that intimacy.
Yeah.
And slowly, too, she began to... I think as Ginger felt more independent as a person, and I felt more independent as an individual person, that liberated us. That was when we could come together.
You brought these values to your marriage. First of all, you'd both been married once, so you certainly had, you knew that marriage was not... You weren't 19 and
Right,
with champagne in your head.
Yeah.
You also have retained your last name, Ginger, so you have some feminist perspective, I guess. Huh?
There's a lot that we've kept very separate. We have separate names, separate finances. I even kept an apartment off campus, so I have a separate place that a couple of nights a week I sleep by myself
But
over in the other
it's not a
apartment.
feminist issue. It's not a political issue.
How are you going to save this marriage if you don't speak up? You don't like this you don't like this separate.
No, I don't like that
A
separate.
nice place to get off at, after a while. You get on each other's nerves. You got to get out, huh?
My husband's only home weekends, and I like it.
You know this? You know her?
No,
You don't know her. I see. She thinks...
Sat next to me because I have a red dress on.
It is true. If you're old-fashioned, I say that in no condescending way. You're not going to like the idea of you with your separate. That's the beginning. Boy, I'll tell you this. I'll bet most mothers would not approve.
Maybe not, but it works for us. I don't recommend it necessarily, but it's how we're both comfortable in learning how to be ourselves as we're in the marriage.
Well, to Miss Scarf's right are Bobby and Jonas Miller. This is interesting. You are almost the opposite of Ginger and Mark.
Yeah. Yes.
Guess what? Married 29 years this June.
It's not that easy.
And they're miserable. No. No, I'll tell you what they are, though. They're honest. Here's the story. They have 3 children. You're Connecticut folks. You're a businessman, Jonas. And Bobby, you have your own business as well.
Yes, I do.
You are honest to say you had an unhappy marriage in a sense that became more obvious when the kids started to leave. Is that so?
Yeah, so what happened was when Jonas and I first met, Maggie asked a very, very important question of all the people she interviews. That question is, what first attracted you to one another? Right. It's key because the things that first attracted you later become the difficult issues in the marriage. I was attracted to Jonas because he was a highly emotional person. His feelings all exposed, all on the outside. Very unusual in a man.
And you liked that.
And I was 18 years old. I hadn't really been around that much, but I knew that that was an unusual way for a man to be. It's totally different from the way my father was. And Jonas saw in me, if I can speak for him, that I was controlled. I was disciplined. If I would tap him on the arm like this, he would perceive my screaming and yelling at him.
Well, that was later on. I think she's really extrapolating out. It took a couple of years before I felt it was that aggressive
He would
a
need
move.
to hit me with a 2x4 just to get my attention, figuratively speaking, of course.
And if you did the slightest kind of thing, it was perceived as aggressive and...
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what? How did that contribute then to whatever might have ailed the relationship?
Well, it was a tremendous mechanism for fighting. And the gentleman in the back who had the problem with his, the picking up, we would use those tools. One of the greatest avenues we used in our marriage was to constantly use the cleaning gimmick as...
a vehicle to fight.
I don't love to clean, and he loves to have things clean.
Let me understand this now. Just you got to. We're trying to learn. You had this undercurrent going on, and what would become a vehicle of its expression would be perhaps mundane things like cleaning, or the kids. I think is that so?
Absolutely.
So if you got mad at the kids, it was often because you were mad at each other, and there was.
Yes.
See how fast I
The
learned?
whole thing blew up when the child who was drawing the most heat went away to school. Well, here we were without this funnel.
Lightning rod. You didn't.
Oh,
the lightning
yeah.
rod was gone.
Absolutely. And what happened was we started picking on the other kids for things that we had never even noticed they were doing before.
Yeah.
And we also started fighting with each other.
Yeah. What was the real grievance?
Right.
If the cleaning and the children were the vehicle for the expression of anger...
Control.
Huh?
Control.
Now, I don't understand what you mean.
Jonas's feeling that he needed to be in control, my feeling that I didn't want to be controlled. And the resolution to that was realizing that you can be autonomous and intimate at the same time. One is not exclusive of the other.
In other words, you can have your separate views, you can be separate people, and you can still share a close relationship. You know, the vision that we all have in this culture about what a healthy relationship is the golden fantasy, the romantic ideal.
Doesn't
It's
exist.
2 halves make a whole, and then you join into one, and then you say, well, which one is it? Suppose one likes Brussels sprouts and the other doesn't. Who dominates?
Yeah.
And the fact is that once you can get into this position, which is, okay, I like Brussels sprouts and I don't like Brussels sprouts,
Let's
but
not
we
make
can,
a federal case.
yeah, we can still be close. I
Yeah.
think it's sort of like Minneapolis and St. Paul, 2 discrete entities joined by a bridge with a lot of traffic across it.
Minneapolis and St. Paul.
All right, Dallas and Fort Worth.
No, I know what you mean. I think I understand your point. What can you give us some free advice as to were there any exercises that you did or
Yes.
what?
We were very fortunate. When we had the problem and we realized that when the older child had left and we continued to fight, and my wife gave me an ultimatum that either the marriage goes or we get some therapy, I was
a lot of people would say, gee, I really don't want to go and have therapy because that means I'm sick. But I realized that I was unhappy. And I realized that I had to address it, and I knew that we couldn't do it, the two of us. Because no matter whenever we talked, we polarized in such a way, we reacted in such a way.
There was no issue too small to fight about. Yeah. Really, there was nothing too minute.
So we got involved. I said, okay, I will try. I will go and I will talk with somebody who can act as a mediator. We were very fortunate to find a gentleman, Stuart Johnson, who, in the procedure that Phil was relating to, when I went down there, I wanted to know, what the heck are you going to do for me? Because I didn't want someone who's going to lay me out on a couch and say, gee, your father did this and your mother did this and kids. And I went in, and I went with some reservation, but I knew I needed help. And in the 3 periods that we went, the first trial periods, Stuart set out a program where we were going to relate to each other, where we were going to give each other the time to be heard, without my emotionalism completely dominating, nor Bobby being able to sit back and say nothing and kind of look like, well, I'm the authority on this.
This is the sickie over here, and I'm just going with him because he needs help. Right. Of course, I realized ultimately that it was as much my problem as it was his.
Yeah. So was this, was the half-hour business a part of this?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. How often do you do it?
Well, we're going back now. The mechanism, once you do it and you find it satisfying, you want to do it more.
Yeah.
Because it does feel good when you have an argument and you finish the argument and you both come out like a hockey team walks away and the score is tied. Both teams go off the ice and have won something.
I understand.
They've each gotten a point.
I understand.
Feels good.
But I'm having trouble getting you to confirm that you actually sit down. You'll pardon me for my focus on this. But, you know, these things, these discussions, and we admire you, and your book is very well reviewed, so please don't miss my point here. If we're not specific, it sounds like psychobabble. Okay, do you sit down once a day? Once a day?
No,
once a week?
A day. I would say perhaps once a week.
And you get a half hour to complain to him?
No, no. I get a half hour to say what's on my mind. I don't say to him, this is what you are doing to me, this is how you're making me crazy.
Well, then what good is it?
Because I tell him that I'm feeling badly about something.
In a nice way, like I do too.
No, I tell him...
A lot of he's out in the garage.
I know, but you know, I figure when I was raising the family, all right, I'm raising the family, he's working, I'm raising the family, all right. Now we are by ourselves. Now, let us take some tea together, talk together.
That's their situation?
I know it.
Yes.
I understand.
So I interrupted you. You were saying?
I tell him how I feel badly, why I feel badly, and he listens. Then he tells me, I cannot accuse him that he's making me feel this way. If I'm feeling this way, it's my problem. I have to tell him that he may not even know that I'm feeling badly about something.
Oftentimes, she didn't verbalize it.
Right.
I was always doing the verbalizing, trying to stop her.
I felt if he really loved me, he ought to know how I feel about this.
Now, let me get this straight. You're saying that you have come to the conclusion that the agony that may have ensued in your relationship, not unlike most other relationships, is your fault?
Yeah. Not my fault.
Your fault too? What about you?
Well, wait a second. No, some of it. A little bit. No, definitely there was some, but I was always telling her my problems, and I was never hearing her part. So I really never knew what was going on. She always knew. I was always sitting her down, not for a half hour.
We're in New York City with couples who obviously have fought their way through some... this is not about infidelity or alcoholism or child abuse or all that awful stuff. And not to diminish that, it exists. This is about, should I say, us? Yeah. And we'll be back in just a moment.
No matter how normal you pretend life is, if you live with someone who has an alcohol problem, you know you live a nightmare. A never-ending series of crises, destroying your life and tearing your family apart. If someone you love is in trouble with alcohol or drugs, don't wait for things to get better. They won't. Call Care Unit now. Nobody cares the way we do.
All you people who want to live high, pasta salad while the world goes by. Suddenly salad.
Betty Crocker's new Suddenly Salad.
Suddenly salad.
Just boil in our flow-through mesh pouch, rinse to chill, and toss in our special seasonings.
All you people have your little quirks. You love tasty salads, but you don't love the work. Suddenly salad.
3 pastas and 1 potato salad.
Suddenly salad.
Live high.
In Watsonville, get a complete dental exam with necessary x-rays, cleaning, and treatment plan, only $39 as an introductory offer by Dr. Gregory J. Ocampo, 6 West 5th, Watsonville.
Next on Barney Miller, it's vacation time.
I have been scrimping and scraping for this vacation all year.
Harris, we'll take care of it.
I'm going to end up in the Catskills.
Hey, worst comes to worst, we can always go eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Hey, let's do 1 potato, 2 potato.
And there's gang war downtown.
Rolex, I don't want either of you to take any unnecessary risks.
Right. Maybe you should go first.
Tonight at 7:30 on KSBW TV 8. Help the city of Seaside keep tidy during official cleanup week on April 20th. Large items such as sofas and refrigerators can be tossed out for free by calling the city. For more information, call 899-6209. KSBW TV 8, working for you.
I disagree with Ginger in having her own separate apartment and separate checking account. I think that you united in marriage as a couple, and as a couple you should try to resolve your problems. You're running off to, your own apartment, and you're not willing to share your mutual finances. I think that's wrong. I think that you should, stick together.
Let me tell you why I feel like it's healthy for us. I mean, I'm not advocating that everybody should do that, but I don't feel as if I'm running away from problems. In fact, we spend a great deal of time discussing our differences, and we are incredibly different in temperaments. But I feel like it's one way that I resist that temptation to be overly dependent. For me, it's a way of making sure that I take care of myself and that I take responsibility for me. So I don't see it as a running away.
Yes. I just wondered if they're ever planning on having children, and if you have children, would you keep your separate, separate?
No, we put the kids in the other residence.
We have
business, but
we have decided not to have children as well. So that's.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So you'll have the kids for them.
Yeah, no, that was the concern I had. I have 3 children, and there are plenty of times I wish I had an apartment to run away to, because it's very hard to find free time by yourself.
Yes.
So that wouldn't work for me, but as much as I would like it to, it's just a consideration for you.
Well, we have 400 children that we work with at Yale University, and I teach all the time, so I feel like I have many children.
We're very much involved in the next generation and professionally.
Why then did you bother getting married in this day and age where people live together? Why don't you just stay that way?
That's a good question, because I wondered myself. And Ginger was pushing it at the time. And it was interesting for the dynamic there, because she was still chasing, and that she wanted that confirmation that there was a real commitment there.
After 4.5 years of dating, I felt like I wanted a commitment.
And I was resisting, but then I realized that I felt that committed. It was in me already. It was already there, and then she...
Once he said yes, I panicked. And I said, oh, my God, intimacy. I don't know if I can handle. But I had been pursuing all that time, and then all of a sudden, when he said, okay, here I am, I went, oh.
So I think our story, if we have one, is about getting a balance in there between that running away and that pursuing, until now it feels very even.
I just wanted to say that I love the concept